Today we're brewing a smash lager at an actual brewery. A smash beer is a single malt, single hop recipe, and they do an amazing job of showcasing just the characteristics of those two ingredients. We're actually at Diatribe, which is the best Asheville brewery you've never heard of, and I don't say that lightly. This beer is also going to be on tap in June during the HomebrewCon in Asheville, so if you want to drink it, come on by and order one from my man Dave, who will also be walking us through this brew day.
Diatribe, we opened toward the end of 2023, so we are just a neighborhood tap room in West Asheville. My partner Betty and I run it, and we have a few part-time amazing bartenders. So just a simple neighborhood tap room focused on high-quality beer.
What style of beer are we brewing?
Doing a Czech Pilsner. It's gonna be a single malt and single hop beer. Right now I've got the strike water in the boil kettle, got the sparge water in the hot liquor tank, so this stacked combi, so hot liquor on the bottom, mash up top.
Yeah.
So we're gonna mash it up there, then you got a floor slash ceiling that goes to the just hot liquor tank. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna feed the hot liquor through the bottom. Overnight I had everything in here heating up, so it came into temp because it's an electric element. Right now I'm recirculating it because I brought it up to temp because it actually will cool down, go through the heat exchanger a little bit. So it's just recirculating to get homogeneous, and I've got lactic acid in there to help acidify a little bit, otherwise we'll end up pretty high in the mash. Calcium chloride, I add it to both the mash and the boil. Keeping it on the low end of salts, Czech style, like not much minerals, just a little bit of, mainly getting a little calcium in there for yeast health.
And you said you already added lactic acid?
Yep.
And that's just because we're using Asheville city water, you need to drop the pH.
Well, it's so soft, and base malt is gonna not lower the pH enough.
Right.
All right, so I'm gonna be switching it over. So now instead of going back into the kettle, it's gonna go into the mash tun now from the bottom. You can hear it shoot.
Okay.
So we're using Riverbend malt, which is a local maltster, and they have a variety of different Pilsner malts. This one is their Czech style Pilsner malt, which is slightly under modified. So if you wanted to step mash it with it, you could, but it's modified enough where you don't have to. You can just throw that up here though, and then I'll let you jump in if you want and stir this one.
I see how you wouldn't need a gym membership doing this every day. Between this and walking to work, you're good.
Yeah, I live a little over 2 miles from the brewery. I walk in every morning, listen to a beer podcast. It gets me primed, ready to go. You know, I'll pull out a piece of paper while I'm walking and jot down notes, and then just get into my day. Yeah.
You don't ever get like burnt out by too much beer?
Pretty rarely. It's, you know, it's one of those things I still just live and breathe it and can't stop thinking about it.
Kyle, this really hurts. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah, it's crazy.
Clymer does in fact sell brewing equipment, which is remarkably similar to the equipment used by Dave at Diatribe, like our grain basket, which separates grain from water, just like the false bottom in the big kettle. We also both use PID controllers with electric elements. We both buy grain from the same exact malt houses and mash it manually with paddles. And we both take pride in making great beer and sharing it with our friends. So whatever you do, do not go to clawhammersupply.com and look at our brewing systems. You won't find anything you like there. Now back to the video.
So how long does your mashing usually take? Like if you're not dicking around with us?
For a normal sized batch like this, like normal ABV, 5%, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes.
Okay, so we're not too far behind.
No, we're on a good track.
It's nice and thin in the back. I had to tag Dave back in.
Why?
Dude, that's brutal. Stirring that. Why is he not ripped? Dude should be ripped.
I used to be an environmental lawyer. I was worried switching to brewing. You know, I did it for years as a home brewer, and I was worried that, you know, switching later in life, it would be tough on my body. And actually, I found getting away from a desk job and brewing's been the best thing ever. Just moving around all day, lifting stuff. Don't have neck issues or back issues as much as I used to with a desk job, so it's been nice.
You do the brewing?
Yep.
You don't have anybody helping you with that?
No, I'm kind of a control freak, so I'd rather just be in complete control and baby the beer from the beginning to the end. So, you know, a lot of times people will, you know, hire out on things they consider grunt tasks, but those are often the most important things, like cleaning kegs or canning. Like, people don't want to do it, but that's where beer can go to die. So I'd rather have, I like to have that control, and I like to work. So
yeah,
that looks real nice in there, Kyle.
It does.
No, at least we can say we did something.
So we're at 150 in there now.
Yep. And then we'll sparge at 168. It's currently sitting at 169.
Cool.
Boil kettle will go to, started at 204, so it's not boiling while we're looking away.
You do 60 or 90 minute mash?
Do a 30-minute mash.
Dude.
And then a 15-minute Vorloff. So at this scale, the amount of time you're spending doughing in versus at a small scale, you already have enzymatic reaction happening during all of that.
We're 25 minutes into it right now.
Yeah, you're getting conversion.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we're already a good bit into it.
Put that in your pipe.
What do I do with it in my pipe? Do I smoke it?
I guess.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to run sanitizer through the heat exchanger and just leave that packed. So we've already heat sanitized it, but we're gonna do belts and suspenders, hit it with PAA, paracetic acid, and just leave it packed. It gets everything in the setup all ready to go, and we already have it in the sanitizer, which is already sanitized and sealed up. So, yeah. So we're gonna push the sanitizer through the knockout hose, through the heat exchanger. I'm gonna come out the bottom of the pump. That's going to be my blow-off bucket, so I'm just going to be sanitizing my blow-off line, my blow-off bucket, my heat exchanger, my knockout line.
Do you always just have sanitizer in there?
No, so basically what I did is I did a pump cycle where I pumped through the spray ball, the sanitizer cycle, and then instead of draining it, I just left it in there, sealed up the vessel, and now I'm going to push it out with just the head pressure from the CO2.
So this is the last fermenter you cleaned?
Yep. Basically. Yeah, so I prepped this last night, got it all ready. And at first it's going to be the hot water from the heat sandy. So once I open this up, you're going to see it start coming out.
And it's going to overflow this bucket?
Basically, I'm just going to eyeball roughly 3 gallons, and I'm also going to feel for heat, because right now it's the hot water coming out, and as soon as it cools down, that's going to be the sanitizer.
Gotcha.
And then I know I've got it packed, and I'll just run a little more through after that.
I hear you. Okay.
Yep, so that's cooled down now.
Dude, having a drain, if you're building a brew space, having a floor drain would be sick.
The reason why I opened a brewery is I got tired of homebrewing without a floor drain. So.
What pH do you typically shoot for with a light lager?
For mash pH, I'm generally targeting around 5.1 to 5.3 for pale lagers and IPAs, except for hazies, just regular clear IPAs, because I think that's going to make the beer a little brighter. 5.3 to 5.5 for amber beers, which means with Asheville soft city water, I'm generally not doing anything to adjust pH. I'm just adding my water salts, which are really trivial on how they're going to nudge it. And then dark beers, I'm going 5.4 to 5.6. You can do chalk. I'm doing baking soda now.
So you actually got to increase it here.
Yeah, because those dark malts are more acidic. They're going to lower that mash pH. It's a pretty obvious test. If you make a dark beer with soft water and you don't adjust it and you get a low pH and you're tasting that, it tastes like cheap diner coffee, take the smallest pinch of baking soda you can take and put in your beer.
Even post fermentation?
Yeah, just like as a way to test it at home. Like I've done this with friends that he had this cherry stout he was making. He was like, I don't know, I don't really like it. It's kind of acidic. We got some baking soda, put the tiniest pinch in, and you could just, still even the tiniest, you'll taste some of that baking soda, but you can see how it just brings out more of the malt complexity and dark malt characters as opposed to just the diner coffee.
Interesting.
You've won some awards.
We have, yep. I won 4 national homebrew competition medals, and then as a commercial brewer, for example, last year in North Carolina, only 3 breweries won both the World Beer Cup and GABF, the Great American Beer Fest. 2 of those were in Western North Carolina. The other one was Sierra Nevada, so it felt pretty good to be in that league up there with them. We also won the Australian International Beer Competition. We won as Best New Entrant for getting 2 golds and silver, and we won at the Brussels Beers Challenge a bronze as well. So we've won in Australia, Europe, and then 2 of the biggest competitions here in the U.S. I view the World Beer Cup, both are put on by the Brewers Association, but this one's also open to international breweries. You're competing against the whole world, and we won a gold in that competition, which was great.
For what?
It was a chocolate porter. A lot of that was taking what I learned as a homebrewer and actually literally using my corny kegs are still stacked over there. I use those all the time. So when I won World Beer Cup last year, that was taking my homebrew corny keg, taking Imperial Stout, putting it in there with different nibs, and then taking that homebrew mentality of let's experiment, let's have fun. So we tested out 5 cacao nibs from different countries and did a tap takeover and was come in, share your thoughts and this and that. And it's okay, we all agree Philippines are the best nibs. So then I've got Philippines is now going into our Imperial Stout after I test, or into our porter after I test it with our Imperial Stout. Then it's all right, now let me test different dosage rates. Now let me test, double toasting versus not adding an extra toasting of the nibs, and just doing all this shit in my corny kegs, and then just finding one that's this hits, send it off to World Beer Cup, gets a gold medal at the most important, competition in the world, and that's using a homebrew corny keg and that mentality of a homebrewer.
Right. That's pretty wild.
And that's just some of my 50. First wort hops. So let's, if you guys want to, I was going to text you the recipe, but I didn't get around to finishing it until last night. But if you guys want to do first wort hops,
cool,
we can do that. First wort hops, the idea is that by adding them when you're running off the wort before it's at a boil, it's at a lower temperature, you're extracting compounds, and you're actually going to carry over a lot of that flavor as if it's a later hop addition. And some people will say a more delicate flavor. So it's a way to get some extra flavor in there. We're using Saz from the Czech Republic, just a classic, my favorite hop in the world, just nice, spicy hop character.
Oh shit.
That's okay, you just pour it back out. I mean, it's all gonna go hot side, so you can even just use your hand if you want. You can even open up that bag more if you want to be able to fit it in.
I got excited.
Start talking about
I was seeing how anal he was. Are you cool with an extra half pound?
Definitely saw a hot pellet fall on the ground.
I did too, but it's okay.
All right, we're getting close. God damn it. Gotta give up.
Emmett thinks he's clumsy. Well, I'm the one knocking shit over, so. All right, let's get the Vorloff going.
You said we started the Vorloff, you started the pump. So what actually is taking place?
We got the false bottom in there, and underneath the false bottom is a couple drains that goes to one pipe.
Gotcha.
We're pulling through that, going through the pump, and then coming back up through the top, and then feeding it along the wall.
Okay.
And so we're just doing, clarifying that work.
Set the bed. Is it the drain on the backside there? Is that it? Going through the sight glass?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
So what you see in the sight glass right now is what's moving through the system.
Gotcha.
So this is where I often get nice and splashed.
You saving this for?
Yeah, I just like to save and reuse. You can titrate it, make sure it's still got a good concentration instead of just sending it down the drain.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the remaining parasitic that's sitting in this dead spot right here. I'm just going to briefly switch it over from beer to hot liquor, just so that's primed and ready to go. So I switched to the hot liquor tank, so it's no longer pulling from the mash tun. As soon as this temperature changes, I know it's now hot liquor.
So now you're adding more hot liquor to the...
Mainly just get it primed, because if I do it after the fact, it has a problem priming.
Okay, gotcha. Because you got the head pressure on it, or?
Yeah, so now we're going to open this up, and yeah, you could probably get a shot in here of the wort going in.
And do you match that flow to your flow going into the kettle? Is that the idea?
Once I start sparging, yeah, we'll dial things so that the pump speed of the sparge water is kind of correlating with the runoff speed of that. And once you get going, it's pretty stable.
Gotcha.
So once that bottom is covered, one of you guys can dump in the first wort hops.
Sounds like a nice stream right there. Dave, you ever dropped a bag in?
I was doing a pro-am brew years ago as a home brewer at a brewery in Florida, and actually this basically exact same. Like I said, these are kind of common, these mash paddles and rakes. So it was I think it was like a Belgian Golden Strong, and it had sugar in it. So we dumped sugar into the boil kettle, and then he takes one of these plastic ones, starts stirring in the boiling kettle.
Oh shit!
Takes it out, and this was missing. The end of the hoe was gone, and we're just like,
you did that?
Fuck! I'm not gonna name the brewery. I don't actually I forget that it was a commercial brewery in Florida, and we're just like, well, this is gonna be a red plasticizer, and at the end of the day, knocked out. It was like, well, I don't know, just fucking finish the boil at this point. Finish the boil. This was sitting in the kettle.
Just sitting on the bottom, fine?
Fine. So yeah, we got the grain bread a little drier than intended on top.
We got to chat and
I got stuck looking at its eyes. And
is it below the top?
Yeah, it's all right. It'll catch up.
Yeah. And you've never experienced a bad day?
I don't think I've ever had a stuck mash in the system, no.
I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say those words, Dave. When and where do you take your pH readings?
This is an area where I am anal. I'm very anal about pH. I think it really affects the flavor of the beer. It's a good way to check for health, make sure things are going right. If you're seeing variance in batch quality, especially if you're using local malt, small farmers in the area, different crop years, it's just good to be aware of if you see something changing. So actually, a really interesting example is when I lived in Hot Springs. We lived on 15 acres in the woods. We had a well. Water was super soft. It was delicious. Made homebrew all the time with it. And then when we sold our house, we moved into our friend's barn apartment 2 miles down the road while we figured out what we were doing next. And as soon as I was living there, I was like, this water just doesn't taste as good. And then I brewed a batch of beer, and same recipe I'd always done, same grain, all this stuff. Never had issues. Suddenly that was much higher mash pH. So I took a Lamont water test kit, and just being 2 miles down the road on a different well completely changed the water profile. But by taking pH measurements, I was able to confirm, it's not just, I'm not crazy. It's not I think this water tastes bad. It literally is different. And it led me, by seeing the pH effect, I was like, oh, that's not where I want it for this mash. I then got the water tested, or I tested the water, and was like, oh yeah, this is more minerally. I need to now adjust how I approach this, brewing this. So this is basically our first runnings. Beersmith estimated we were going to be at 5.34. I was targeting around 5.3 to 5.4.
And you use Beersmith?
To this day, yeah, it's great.
Is it the same software that's used on the homebrew side?
Yep.
No difference at all, just the scale.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I basically have 2 profiles in there for like when I do small batch and
Gotcha.
when I do big batch.
You use Beersmith.
Yes.
Do all professional? I mean,
Not all, but a lot do. Because I mean, so many professional brewers came out of homebrew.
Yeah.
And they're already used to it. They've got it dialed in, and it's really easy just to scale up and create profiles for big equipment. So yeah, there's other software out there, but it's a great price and it's very functional, and I've always been very happy with it.
And what efficiency do you get on this?
We're estimating today that we're going to get a 77% efficiency.
Brew house efficiency. Damn, that's pretty good.
For efficiency here, it just, I get what I get and I go with it.
Right.
The funny thing is when I switched to Riverbend, I started seeing more efficiency on their malt than other ones. Efficiency versus consistency, I prefer a consistently good product. Even if the ABV is a little different, it's still going to taste great than trying to be as efficient and get as much sugar as the grain and this and that. I think focus on flavor, don't focus on numbers for efficiency.
The first runnings, it was 18 Plato, right?
Yeah, 17.9.
And then it'll get diluted on the second runnings. And then the combined will be like 1050.
I was going to say, that's way high.
So like 10.1 is our target starting gravity. That would equate to like 1040.
Okay. So
You take the 10, you take the 10, you multiply it by 4. So you take the Plato, multiply it by 4, and then that's the last part of your gravity. So it's 1.0, and then it's the Plato times 4.
4, okay.
So we're targeting basically, it's not exact, but that's pretty much it. So we're basically targeting 1040. You know, sprinkle that in there.
Big day. And this goes in the boil?
Yep.
Just calcium chloride, no gypsum?
Yeah, usually I'll use a little bit of both, but with the Czech pills, I like to keep it really simple.
Your tap list is not the typical Asheville brewery tap list.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
In what sense?
In the sense that half of it's not IPAs.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you have a much bigger selection of lagers.
Yeah, our goal is to always have more lagers than IPAs on the board, but still have varieties for people. We always have a sour on. We always have an imperial stout on. We often have a porter on. Within the lagers, we like variety. We always have a dark lager year round. That's very important to Emmett. Otherwise, he'll send me hate mail. So.
And you have a cask beer. That's not a.
Yeah, English mild. So 3.3% amber English ale on warm and flat.
Yeah.
And it sells because we're in a beer nerd city. People love it, and if you do it right, if you make it well, people learn that is a great thing.
Ooh.
So Dave, is this fermenting under some pressure then?
So this is the bright tank. So it's just finished beer under pressure, conditioning, lagering.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty much ready to go. It's carbonated.
And you
tasting great.
Carbonate it with like the natural carb, or you?
Yeah. So there sometimes like you could put a carb stone in there. I'm trying to avoid that if I can. Well, there's a lot of debate, which I don't fully buy into, that if you carb with natural carbonation, it's a finer, more delicate, nice bubble than with forced carbonation.
Yeah.
I've never seen research on that. I don't necessarily believe it.
Yeah.
But when you do a carb stone, you're bubbling the beer. And when you bubble beer, you're creating foam. And when you create foam, that's foam proteins going out of solution. And once a foam protein is gone, it's gone forever. Yeah, there's more, but the more you do it, the more you can risk having shitty head on your beer. So what I do is in the fermenter, I'll spun towards the end of fermentation, just basically like close it off. I would do that at home too with like little baby conicals or things like that.
Just like a bar?
Yeah, so it depends. Yeah, basically a bar. These are all pressure rated to that. So if I could go higher, if I had a better vessel, that'd be great. But
And what's the point of the titration? Just to make sure you're.
check the concentration. In this case, the paracetic acid. So the sanitizer, make sure the concentration's still good. Okay. I want to be between like 100 and 200 ppm roughly. I think I'm going to end up around 150. So that, like, the first one was sulfuric acid. This is, I don't know how you say it, ferrione indicator, potassium iodide. Now we're going to add this paracetic acid titrant until it turns clear. There we go. So 11 drops, maybe 12. Yeah, 11 was the same color. That puts us right around 150 ppm.
How do you know that? Based on the number of drops you put in?
Yep. Yeah, so every drop is 15 ppm. So 11 times 15. So 160.
Would you call that clear, Dave?
Well, it's not going to get any more clear.
You mean just not? It's not.
They lost the color.
Yeah.
Color.
Yeah, it's changed the color.
It's like it's not cloudy.
And you're not going to get, obviously can't remove everything.
Yep. So those first wort will be boiling for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Why 90 minute boil?
We're using Pilsner malt, and Pilsner malt, being lower kiln, has more SMM, which is the precursor to DMS, dimethyl sulfide. So you want to make sure that you're boiling long enough, vigorous enough to blow off, to convert all the SSM into DMS and blow it off, so that we're not getting flavors of cooked cabbage, canned corn, and whatnot.
Where are you up to?
We still got a little bit to go.
Gotcha.
Oh, this is the stick of destiny. What is this thing?
yeah, stick of destiny, sure.
You place the marking at the top of the kettle.
Yep. And so that tells me how many barrels. So now we're coming out of the drain and going through the pump into the whirlpool arm.
You're adding water.
So it's still pulling from the same bottom, it tees off over there.
Oh, gotcha. Now it's going into the pump.
Yeah, so see, between the sight glass and that ball valve is,
So that's coming down through here.
Yep.
And then through the whirlpool arm right there. Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, I'm with you. And then when you're pulling off, do you whirlpool to keep all your hops in the center before you pull off, or does this pump not even care? Or?
Oh yeah, we'll whirlpool at the end of the boil.
Gotcha.
And then we'll do a 10-minute whirlpool, 10-minute rest.
And then that'll keep everything in the middle.
Yeah, it's pretty good about
enough.
it. Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool.
What are you doing down there?
Don't worry about it.
I can see you.
Oh shit.
Aren't you on the clock, Emmett?
I didn't realize I was in busted view.
We pretty much nailed it. So you can jiggle it. It's right on the surface. Perfect timing.
That's what you call it.
The jiggle stick.
Yeah, got it.
And now we're draining the mash tun.
That really wasn't much.
I got this shit dialed in.
Yeah.
Okay. We're drained.
So last round, you're cooling it down.
Yep. Just so I get a more accurate reading.
What do you try to cool it down to? Anything specific?
Nah, usually if I put it in cold water, it'll get in the mid to high 60s. Just in the ballpark, seems to be
And then
pretty accurate.
60 Celsius.
Fahrenheit. For like basically room temp for the gravity and pH readings.
I guess what does the last running tell you? Because you can't really.
I mainly am collecting it, so I have data points on, am I adding enough lactic acid to make sure my last runnings are not too high in pH?
Okay.
Because if it is, then I will adjust on future batches.
Okay. So it's more for like a reference point going forward.
Yep.
Dude, that's crazy.
It seems like the worst design ever.
Oh, terrible. Well, again, I can only
Okay.
blame Premier so much because apparently this was custom designed, so. I mean, the height's not an issue because like with a lot of breweries, you actually want the height so you can go into like a big dumpster.
Did that come with it?
Oh, this did.
Okay. That makes it better.
What about this guy?
But the problem is usually what you do is you have like on a forklift like a big bin and you'll just wheel it up and go under. You can't do that when it's over the fucking stairs. So I've been trying all these different methods and this has actually worked out pretty well.
That 200-pound capacity is a little concerning. Oh.
Wow.
Get it before it dries up?
You've said that before.
Hey.
Work smarter, not harder.
No sweetness really left in there at all.
And yeah, this is another thing where if you guys want to jump in and get photos of yourself doing it.
You're doing a great job.
So basically, don't fill it all the way, but.
Who picks this up?
We get a couple farmers that come and get it.
And repeat that 15 times. How many times is
It'll probably be about 9 bins worth.
9 bins? And how full, Dave? I don't want to
break the farmer's back. That's good.
Because he lifts them and puts them in his pickup truck?
Yep. Dumps them in the trash cans.
So do you have to call the farmer when there's grains out there, or do they just?
Yeah, I'll just give them a text, and they're pretty good about getting over here real nice and quick. I worked at a brewery where they might come out the next day, sometimes several days, and it starts stinking, and you're just like, you can't have this stench at a brewery. Like, 'cause all this amount of grain like adds up fast.
I don't want Dave taking all the credit for this brew day. I feel like getting the last bit out, it's gonna be like not awesome. Dave, do you climb in here?
No, I got a few tricks to get the remaining stuff out.
Use water?
I will hose it out at the end, but I get all the grain out pretty much for the most part by, I have to like lean in to get some of it out with under like the handle for the false bottom, but that whole wheel will reach all the way to the back if you're not 5'2" like you.
5'7", on a good day.
So basically just whirlpooling while we're...
Just to homogenize it to get a good gravity reading.
Yeah, what's the foam control?
It's the 5-star foam control.
What's the homebrew side stuff called?
I mean, I don't know if they have that one in homebrew size, but yeah, I mean, it could be the same stuff, literally.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there was a thing people used to add for like boilovers.
I don't have faith in this system to not boil over if it's closed. It's a very vigorous boil. If we get like
not a crazy vigorous boil.
It is just getting going though too. I just start the timer at 206 for consistency. It'll probably get a little more vigorous. All right, target was 10.1. We are actually at 10.4, which is good because the boil off rate is going to be actually less than what Beersmith has it programmed for. So overshooting a little bit is a good thing. So we should end up in the universe.
So we're a little high.
We're a little high, but it'll even out towards the end. If anything, we might come in a little low. I'd have to...
Because we're boiling off less?
In the summer, I mean, it's a huge no-no, to wear shorts in a brewery. In the summer, on a brew day, I will brew in shorts because my logic is, if I'm suffering from heat exhaustion wearing pants and all this shit, I'm far more likely to injure myself. And I'd rather get a bad burn on my leg than be sloppy and like have something burn my fucking face or something else like that, like open a wrong valve. And so...
Is that like a CIP wall at the top as well?
Yep, so I'm gonna do, right now I'm just getting mainly the grain out because it'll kind of get caught up in the false bottom, and then I'm gonna do hot water rinse and then caustic, and that'll get it more deeply cleaned. So now, the goal right now is just getting the bulk of grain out of there. Got about an hour left in the boil.
Half hour till hops.
Half hour till hops.
And then so that's 30 minutes, and then is there flame out or 5 minutes?
15 and 5.
Okay, 15-5.
And we'll do a super moss.
What am I doing? One container?
One pitcher.
Oh damn, that is a vigorous boil. Yeah, it's kind of scary, dude. Not gonna lie. Dave, did I go too hard?
Oh, no, you're good. If it's not touching the spray ball, you're safe.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Whoa. Oh, shit. Whoa. He said as long as it doesn't hit the spray ball, we're all right, but I don't trust it. Isn't that pretty wild looking? It's like little fish swimming. Oh, God. It's like the ocean, dude.
I know.
Have you actually boiled this over, Dave?
I don't think so. I think I had to shut off the heat one time because it was about to get there. Yeah, the irony is they say another benefit of first wort hops is that you get all that nucleation out early and you don't have to deal with risk of boil over later. I'm like, bullshit. It seems like it actually makes it worse in my experience.
Yeah, it didn't really help our cause. I was too scared to go that aggressive, Dave.
Yeah.
That's our 15-minute edition. We got a 5-minute to go.
How many gallons is this thing?
Maybe 300 gallons. If it's 31 gallons to a barrel, it's probably around 10 barrels to the top up, or we're doing a 7-8 barrel batch. It'll be 7 at the end. We're kind of starting off with like knocking out around 8 barrels.
Explain Supermoss and how the Royal Flock.
Yeah, Supermoss, World Flock, they're carrageenan-based things that help create flocculation in the boil kettle, so you're dropping out some proteins that you don't want that could create haze.
Water in there.
And what's the timing on this?
I'm going to add it right at the end of the boil.
Okay.
If you want to add those last hops.
You're just getting it ready?
Good to go now. This is the Irish with the super moss. Let it boil. Yeah, just turn on the pump and start whirlpooling.
Where do you add the yeast?
The top of the fermenter. I'm gonna go up in the ladder and add all the stuff while we're knocking out.
Gotcha.
I love 3470 yeast. It's very predictable. It's reliable. It's just a workhorse that is predictable and does its job. All right, so we're open to the drain. Heat exchanger is open. We are gonna start. Start chilling. Turn on the pump. We're gonna keep an eye on this temp. You're gonna see it already changed the beer here. You're gonna see it change in the sight glass over to here from sanitizer to beer. So I'm just going to the drain right now. There's beer. Now we're going into the fermenter. We're gonna turn on the oxygen. You don't necessarily need it with dry yeast, but I'm gonna add it anyways. And we're keeping an eye on that. We're still dropping.
Where are you turning on the oxygen?
This lever right here. So the tank is behind the brew house and it's pumping in. So we got a oxygen stone in there. We got the temp probe here. Beer's going through here.
Oh, interesting.
Temp is still dropping. So there goes the oxygen.
Very cool.
Whirl pack bag, which is a sanitary closed bag. You could just do this off your fermenter at home.
That's for every beer?
Yep. So you can see a bunch of bags sitting all over here. Ideally, you have it sitting in a warm chamber, but I just let it sit for months or however long I want. And other than the settling of gunk, like there's the Italian Pils, it's not pressurized, it's not all weird hazy. So that says that what's coming out of the heat exchanger is sanitary. You could also pull it out of the fermenter, and then your whole process you're not having bugs that will at least be growing at room temperature, let alone 48 Fahrenheit fermentation. So.
And then if you see one, what do you do? That's pressurized.
You hope for the best and assume it was a bad job taking a sample. I used to have a colleague that was very bad at taking samples at another brewery, but you just keep an eye on the beer. And if I was worried, then I would take a sample to my friends at one of the big breweries that have a lab and say, hey, I got this. I want to rule out, was it just a bad sample or is it actually something in the beer? So I've got a little sample valve down here in line. So this is after the heat exchanger. That's okay, it's still closed. So this will be our gravity and pH. In theory I should have gloves on and Sani, but I've never had a problem. I just keep it real simple, get it in there, watch what I'm doing, seal it up, push out air, and then whirl. That's why it's whirl pack. And then that seals it up. We're down to 47. So since I'm chilling the tank and it'll still, as we go, it'll probably keep drifting a little bit colder. We'll probably end up with around a 46 Fahrenheit knockout, which is, I'm targeting between 46, 48, basically shooting roughly 46 and then just let it free rise to 48. So we were targeting 11.4. Oh shit. Despite Emmett being here, we managed to somehow not fuck it up.
Throw me under the bus.
Man, lucky charm.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
Yeah. What were we shooting for pH?
I don't.
Whatever.
I'm just making sure I'm happy with the results. That's good. Anywhere between low fives. That's normal.
When we try,
I'm not going to control it unless it's an IPA, really.
When we brew this at the office down the road, should we shoot for a 5.2, 5.1, 5
to 5.2 is generally normal.
What were you shooting for on that? The pH?
I don't really have a target for the end of pH. If it's an IPA, I would target 5 because I know with the dry hops I'm going to be adding a bunch more, increasing the pH. So I want to make sure I'm a little lower to start. But with this, the yeast is going to do its job. It's going to get in that happy range of
And I don't
4.3,
think
4.2.
on the homebrew level, I don't think I've ever taken a post-boil pH reading, honestly. We take it during the mash.
Yeah, I think it's going to more so let you know if you did something wrong, or again, if you know you're going to be dry hopping a lot and you want to have it dialed in a little more early in the process.
Gotcha.
But even then, even if you get it down, it still might need an adjustment when you're dry hopping. But also, it's one of those things where it's people have been doing it this way forever, not fucking worrying about raising mash pH or beer pH during fermentation.
Right.
They roll with it, and it's kind of a new thing that breweries are starting to do it. So we are gonna get ALDC and Clarity firm. I already have my zinc, so that was just the granular stuff with boiling water to keep it sanitary. And then once we get everything in there, we'll be in a pretty comfortable spot. Zinc is a nutrient that yeast needs for its health, just like we need vitamins and nutrients. So we add that as our yeast nutrient. Clarity Firm is another clarifying agent that works by breaking down, again, certain proteins that you don't need or want in beer. You want your foam proteins, but you don't want the haze proteins unless you're making something like a hazy. And it actually works by breaking down gluten proteins, which actually indirectly ends up making it gluten reduced. And usually when they test it, it's actually under the gluten-free levels. Diacetyl is an off flavor that gives a note of like movie theater butter. It can also be caramel, and a good fermentation is going to help prevent that, but as extra safety, belts and suspenders, you can use ALDC, and it basically prevents that stage of diacetyl formation during the fermentation, so you don't have to worry about getting through that stage because that stage is not happening. I'm not worried about being too low, but no need to go that low. So that was a Clarity Firm, now we're doing the ALDC. This is the zinc. Yeah, and since we're chilling the fermenter, oh yeah, it's at the temp probe now, it's reading, so we didn't know what it's actually in there, so we pitched at 46.
Pretty easy to brew and you don't have to do anything.
It's gonna ferment over a couple weeks, give or take. With the 3470 being pretty predictable and regular, I expect a couple weeks. It'll drop about a Plato a day for most of the days, so we're just over, we're 11.4, I think it was, Plato. So it's going to get down to like 3 in about 8 days, and then the last few bits going to take several days. Then we'll lager it all the way until homebrew crown. That's why we wanted to get it in the tank early so we can lager it.
Which is how many weeks away at this point?
A little over 8. So
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think it's just more than the recommended German formula based on Plato and blah, blah, blah.
F2 is a good one.